Welcome to Virtual Reality in Education, Intentional Immersion. I'm Valerie Hill, Director of the Community Virtual Library here in Second Life and in other virtual worlds. And I'm going to let Bethany and Marie introduce themselves. These two are amazing colleagues and virtual world pioneers who are expanding the Community Virtual Library into Kitely, as well as exploring many virtual reality headset spaces for education. Bethany is the director of our Hypergrid Resource Library. Marie is the director of our Digital Citizenship Museum, both in Kitely. And by the way, we are on Discord, so you can find our virtual reality exploration channel right here on Discord. You may have attended one of our Virtual Reality versus Virtual Worlds Smackdowns, a fun boxing event where we discuss the various ways that you can look at the differences between virtual reality, which is often experienced with a headset, a head-mounted display, in a first-person view without seeing one's avatar, and virtual worlds, which are persistent virtual environments usually viewed with an avatar on a desktop or a laptop computer. These, as you can see on the slide, may overlap. There's a lot of misinformation about the differences, but my colleagues and I believe that at this current moment, virtual worlds hold more potential for learning, and you'll see why. So first of all, where have we been in virtual environments to date? Virtual worlds have been around for over 15 years. My res date is 2006. Yet, I've run into many educators who still have never even heard of virtual worlds. And now, VR is getting a lot of hype. Libraries are purchasing VR headsets, and developers are touting the wonder of learning in virtual reality. So trying to view the differences between VR and VW, virtual reality as in a headset, and virtual worlds as in a desktop, I created another chart that you can see here on the screen that shows that they are both really under the hierarchy of virtual reality. VR really doesn't have a clear definition. Jaron Lanier, who some people call the father of virtual reality, gives us 52, perhaps tongue-in-cheek, definitions in his book, Dawn of the New Everything. And now that I have an Oculus Rift to go out and explore these VR platforms, and I've spent some time in several so-called educational VR spaces, I can better discuss the difference in using my headset and using desktop VR. First, I can only spend about 30 minutes wearing a VR head-mounted display, and I start to feel a bit uncomfortable, maybe even a bit nauseous at times. Second, although I sometimes think, oh wow, this is cool, how beautiful, there's a giant dinosaur walking toward me, I take off the headset and really thinking I'm never going to return to that space. Pop, it's a disposable bubble. And finally, I'm finding I really like the distance between my head and the desktop in virtual worlds like Second Life. I can just let go of the physical world around me, and I can feel just as immersed here as I can with a VR headset. Virtual reality, well, all reality, is in our mind. If you become comfortable in a virtual world, you let go of your surroundings, and you feel that you're in a real space. How many of you agree with that statement? Great, I'm seeing some people who do feel like reality is in your mind. But let's think for just a minute. With all this VR headset hype, are educators flocking there? Well, Bethany and Marie tell me that the VR Educator Conference that was just held had way more people than any virtual world conference that we've had so far. And we did hear a lot of enthusiasm from Laurel Van Fossen today, the organizer, earlier today. And yet these VR spaces still don't hold nearly as many features as we have here. Often they have no voice, no chat, sometimes no ability to build anything. Sure, they're understanding that the social aspect needs to be there. And you can see on the slide there, educators in VR are growing. There's little to no avatar personalization. Everybody looks pretty much the same without a personal digital identity. As educators, we all understand that we must have a clear purpose and clear learning objectives when we go into virtual environments. Here's one I visited with an Oculus headset, and you might want to zoom in on the screen so you can take a look at this environment. I'm wondering if anyone recognizes the little object where I've put a white arrow and it's pointing to a small object. Can somebody identify that and type it in the text chat? Yes, it's the Diary of Anne Frank, absolutely. I went to the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam on my VR headset. I felt the cramped little room. When I went to the Anne Frank experience in a virtual world created by Spiff Whitfield, I walked around with other avatars and I went through a series of student assignments. And I felt just as much sense of presence as I did wearing this VR headset in Anne Frank's tiny cramped room. Plus, I was given real learning objectives and I was able to interact with all of the objects and able to explore with them. So why are the VR headsets necessary? Are they really necessary? Let's hear more from Bethany about her experience.
Okay, thanks, Val. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Bethany Winslow, and I'm an instructional designer at San Jose State University. And I know from experience, and I think probably a lot of us here collectively know this, shiny tech objects often get adopted quickly and then actually not used in probably a lot of institutions. These are just some screenshots of a few of the many competing platforms that are currently in beta for social virtual reality. And I've been playing around with my Oculus Rift headset for a few months, but I've also been looking at the desktop versions of some of these platforms. And we need to keep playing around, testing, and sharing notes. Today what I want to do is share my first take on AltSpace VR and Engage VR and how I think they compare with virtual worlds like Second Life and OpenSim. And I've got a couple slides and some pictures here. Val, we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So first of all, I have to say, I think a head-mounted display is kind of like putting a skybox on your face. For me, it feels fairly claustrophobic in some ways, not just on the face, but in world. I feel like what I really want to do is kind of get outside, go around the corner. I can't be the only person who's kind of frustrated by the fact that it feels like you're in a tiny bubble. It's very confining. And at my house in AltSpace VR, I found I could fly off the terrace, which was fun, but I found myself wanting to know what the edge of the world is. I keep feeling like I should be able to go further. If you fly down below your house in AltSpace, outside the terrace, you can find that the whole skybox is wallpapered with what looks like a NASA photo. And I really enjoyed this sort of like way to hack, but there were some things that really frustrated me. I had Val over to my space a couple of times, and I discovered visitors do not have flight permissions. And I also couldn't teleport her to my position. But the most frustrating thing for me is that you can't edit the scene in any way. And I'm so used to being in a world where I can move the chairs. What's the point of being able to have a personal space if I can't actually personalize it? So it's funny because in the Vicar survey that we had, the results were pretty clear. People want to use this technology for more than just a virtual field trip with VR in the classroom. They want to use virtual environments as a classroom, but there's some really big challenges to that. Next slide for me, Val. Thank you so much. So here's a couple other screenshots. I shouldn't have actually described my personal home as a skybox, because you can actually create a skybox from there. And honestly, your house in AltSpace, it is like a skybox. So it's kind of like a skybox within a skybox. And I don't have pictures of my skybox, but these pictures that you see on the screen are from flying out past your apartment terrace, and you can see that It looks like an Apollo moon lander. That's what wallpapers the environment, I think. Anyways, in the skybox, I could add a video, but despite multiple attempts, I couldn't get anybody else to be able to enter my skybox. I put a teleporter out on the terrace. I unlocked it, you guys. I checked my settings. We did this multiple times. Val tried a few times, couldn't get in. I couldn't get into her skybox at her location. And something else that really kind of bugged me, in the skybox itself, and I don't have pictures of it here, but all around I had this, sort of clouds all around, and there was no ground, so there was no sense of orientation. I read some objects and I tried to arrange the space, like I wanted to move the video monitor closer to the landing spot to create sort of a welcoming area that's grounded in a sense, and I couldn't do that. I just felt sort of suspended in air, and it really bugged me. We can go to the next slide. I've also explored Engage VR, and I think Marie will talk about this. I know Marie likes it. I'm not in love. Again, it feels very confining. This screenshot is from one of the educators in VR demo sessions that I think the makers of Engage hosted, and we're all standing together with a 360 video of a great white shark. Very cool with a headset on, but I've been on several of these tours. I've gone in there by myself. I've gone there with other people, and I found a couple things. First of all, the desktop version of this is like totally unusable. It was the worst of the bunch. I think Sansar was not bad. Their desktop is not bad. Mozilla Hub's desktop's not bad. Engage VR desktop is like completely unusable. And again, it feels very restrictive. You don't have the ability to run or fly. You can't text or chat with another user. I couldn't even pan around and see my own avatar. I felt trapped. But the most important thing, it was very glitchy. Not just one time. I think every time I ever have done anything in there, it's on multiple tours. You got dropped between scenes. There were multiple issues. And I know here in Second Life or OpenSim, we have mic or audio issues, we have lag, but it's not like constant. So, and I know one of the things that people really liked about Engage VR is the 360 feature, and it is cool when it works, but I tested it a bunch of times, and for me, it worked literally 50% of the time. And when it doesn't work, that's what it looks like on the screen. And another thing that bothered me is that when you're in there with a head-mounted display, there's no way to search very easily. It's really clunky to try and find videos. Maybe I can find a workaround, but you do a keyword search or something, but I want to be able to access my own YouTube channel where I have playlists of content. I can't remember the name of a video or a URL, you know what I mean? So this next screenshot is another environment that you can choose, and it shows the interface also with, choosing your location. I don't have an upgraded account, so I can't speak to all of the environments, but my main point with this is that these are standalone sessions. They're not persistent. And I really think the persistent aspect is one of the main reasons we've invested so much time that we have in virtual worlds. And this is how we've developed a community of practice here. So, and the other thing is we already build these kinds of environments ourselves, and we have control over them. This was an environment, it's like Stonehenge, right? We have stuff like this, and in OpenSim, we share these as OER files. It opens open educational resources, and we modify each other's environments and content. But I just feel like these kinds of platforms are very show and tell. They're not interactive. Several times Val and I met in different environments and thought, wow, this looks really pretty, but what are we supposed to do here, or just talk to each other? I mean, that's really nice, but there needs to be more. It can't be just a visual tour. It just felt very passive. And compared with what people have built here in Second Life or in OpenSim, which is very immersive, where students are exploring and are not driven through the experience or handheld through some kind of experience, it's just an entirely different experience altogether. And the next slide too, Val. Even though Engage was released on Steam in 2016. I just realized that was 4 years ago. I had this weird experience I mentioned yesterday. I created a private session. I think I was waiting for Val to join me or something. She couldn't come that night. And we were going to go test it out. But I created a private session, and I used the Museum of Titanic environment. And it's okay. But I just have to say, there's a generic aspect to it. You're walking around a museum environment, and there's historic pictures on the wall, right? but not any different than what we got here. But the one thing that was very cool was the replica, and I don't have a picture of it, the replica of the Titanic in the other room, and they got miniature scale humans actually walking around on the deck, and the deck musicians are playing. That was very cool. You can bend down and like, wow. But all of a sudden, I heard people talking, and I realized it wasn't coming from the miniature Titanic. I heard them from around the corner in my own private session. And I was like, okay, did I publish this publicly? And I got some people who are joining me. So I go walk around the corner, and there's this like weird overlap with two other people, and they were testing their own session. It's probably hard to see in this picture, but one of the guys was almost invisible. He was standing at that wheel. He was moving around and everything. He's like a ghost. And just as a little aside, I will say I do love the avatar creation in Engage. You can upload a photo, and it's pretty good. The picture of me was, it was the only one I had on hand. I was partially in the shade when it was taken, so it wasn't, this doesn't come out very good. But, and then the next slide, I have a few other pictures with this. But at first, I thought these guys had joined my session deliberately, but I tried to engage with them, and they couldn't see me, they couldn't hear me. I listened to their conversation for 5 minutes, and I'm, of course, walking around and taking selfies. But I was listening to them, and they were talking about what the view was, and, you know, student 17's headset, and blah, 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 and it was just so surreal. So, you know, this is the kind of thing where it was like, and this is just a random, you know, experience. But, and then we'll go to the next slide. So I think that it's important that all of us continue to explore these places on our own and together. And I know we can't know a platform until we've really used it a whole bunch. But my first impression of a lot of these platforms is that some people seem really focused on the novelty of the visual immersion aspect. And I think they're overlooking the physical or kinesthetic and the social aspect. And by social, I don't mean hanging out and just talking, right? I mean, if we're just going to talk, we can do that on the phone or a Zoom session. We need to do things together, I think. And then I really like my Oculus Rift, but that's partially because I didn't pay for it. It's a hand-me-down from my brother-in-law because he got an Oculus Quest. But Val and I visited a few times at our Rift homes, and then suddenly we couldn't do that anymore. Now you're prompted to connect with your friends using Facebook, even though we'd already connected, we'd already gone to each other's houses. So I'm really irritated by that. And I didn't sign up for that. I don't want to be forced to use Facebook just to have Val come visit me or somebody else come visit me at my virtual house. We're not even connected on Facebook. What if we don't have a Facebook account? So this is what we're going to end up with if we let big game companies drive the development of virtual environments. So we're exploring other worlds too. I've actually spent a lot of hours building my own world in Sansar. And that was, you know, that was a little frustrating at times, but the desktop version is at least usable. It looks beautiful in a head-mounted display. I need to put some more hours in to understand the interface, but I was really rooting for Sansar, and maybe that's not going anywhere. And then lastly, I've tinkered a little bit with Mozilla Hubs, which I think is very promising. Their desktop application is also easy to use, and I just need to find some more time to play with it. But so I want to just wrap up my thoughts on the last slide here. I'm going to stay committed to tinkering and exploring these platforms because I think it's a fruitful kind of exploration. But I do keep coming back to just how plain old useful desktop VR is. And again, I'm an instructional designer. I love playing around with the technology, but at the end of the day, I'm going to prefer what actually works and what's available, like for everyone right now, over what feels, I don't know, gimmicky still at this point. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Bethany. That's great. And now we're going to hear some more from Marie.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Marie Vans, or Amvan Lapis in Second Life. My day job is as a senior research scientist for HP Labs, and I am doing work in virtual reality. So after hearing those experiences just now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some information that can help when figuring out whether to explore these places or not. And I'm going to focus on 3. Engage VR seems to be very popular with educators, and we found this in the survey that we ran. And it's especially popular with those who they're just starting out with this idea of using VR for educational experiences and maybe don't have experience in other virtual worlds. I believe it is popular with these folks because the actual VR experience is very good compared to other platforms, especially platforms that have tried to move from virtual worlds like Second Life to VR. For example, ScienceSpace. Now, they have developed, Engage VR has developed tools specifically for delivering educational experience, and that's the reason why it's so easy to use. Is owned by a company located in Ireland, and it supports desktop on all the major OS platforms. In addition, there is headset support for all the Oculus products, the HTC Vive, Valve, Windows Mixed Reality, and the headset I use, which is the HP Rev. Interestingly, it does not support mobile, so I'm guessing that means it doesn't work with cardboard. Now, the default avatars are human, but the platform doesn't support custom rigged avatars, so you have to be a human. There are also in-world building tools, and the platform itself is Unity based. If you are a pro member, you can work with them to get your own 3D scenes added. However, this platform is closed, and as far as I can tell, there are no APIs that allow you to add functionality. So that said, most of the presentation tools that educators need are supported, and you can stream from OneDrive, Google, Dropbox, and even have PowerPoint presentations there. So, but one thing I find to be a drawback is that the default number of avatars allowed is only 50, but I have seen documentation that says that can be increased if you asked. I'm not sure if that means you have to be a pro member or not. By the way, the people who have been in virtual worlds for a lot longer don't seem to be as enamored with this platform as we just heard, but I'm willing to suggest that that is because they are the experts in developing immersive virtual experiences and have tried some of these social VR platforms. And as we have already seen, haven't been that great of experiences for them. Okay, so the next platform I'll discuss is AltSpace, when we heard about that from Bethany. Again, this platform, many of you may not know this, but Microsoft actually bought AltSpace in 2017. In contrast to Engage VR, AltSpace is a general purpose platform in the same way that Second Life is a general purpose social venue. Obviously, because Microsoft owns it, only Windows OS desktop is supported. But at the same time, most headsets are supported, and that includes mobile. The default avatars are cartoonish, and like Engage, you can't create custom rigged avatars, although that could be changed in the future. Now, while the platform itself is closed source, unlike High Fidelity and Mozilla Hubs, AltSpace does have a developer portal that allows you to create importable content using Node.js, which is a JavaScript runtime environment. There are also some basic object building tools, which I expect will get a lot better over time. I, like Val and Bethany, have been frustrated with the tools that are provided by default. I have been trying to get a slide presentation to show up in my group common space using slides.com. There's a mistake on this slide. It's saying SlideShare, but it's actually slides.com. I am able to view and control the slides in my space, but folks who are in the room cannot see them. So while I'm sure this issue will be resolved fairly soon, I'm actually more concerned with the fact that slides.com is the only way to present slides. And I have been trying to create an environment in which to meet with my team at work, and I don't feel comfortable having to upload company confidential presentations into an external website. Loading up a JPEG for each slide within our own environments like we do here feels a little like we have more control over our information. So currently, the default number of people you can get into a room is 20 to 30 people. However, just this week, AltSpace released a new version that supports groups and group common spaces that are supposed to support up to 78 simultaneous avatars. Now, before I move on, I just want to point out that a recent International Education in VR conference was held in AltSpace, and if you went to the keynote, you heard about this. Some of those sessions took place in rooms, Mozilla Hubs, and Somnium Space, among others. And that more than 5,000 unique visitors attended that conference over the course of 6 days. And apparently the average number of avatars they were able to fit into a room was just pretty impressive. Okay, so for the last platform I'm going to discuss, that it's Mozilla Hubs. So like AltSpace, Mozilla Hubs is a general purpose platform, but what makes it unique is that it runs on WebVR and is completely open source. In fact, I recently saw some discussion on Discord that a lot of the code used here is from High Fidelity, which many of you may know opened up its source code for forking before shutting down its VR platform business. Obviously, one of the advantages of having an open source project is that many people are working on it. This will allow it to evolve more rapidly than closed source applications can. Mozilla Hub's desktop support, and in fact, I haven't had a chance to see it in virtual reality because my headset is a mixed reality based headset, and Microsoft requires a specific Windows 10 version called Creators that my own PC doesn't support because I'm Enterprise. You must access Mozilla Hubs through the Microsoft Edge browser when you enter the mixed reality portal instead of Steam VR like we're used to. I haven't had a chance to confirm this, but the new release of Edge might now support WebVR for all Windows 10 versions. I'm going to check that out this coming week. Aside from these issues, though, I believe Mozilla Hub may be the most promising platform out there. And this is because it is open source. You can have any avatar you like, and because they can bring in any URL, you can access PDFs, Google, Overdrive, and others that may be needed for presentation. I was able to quickly customize my own Mozilla Hubs room using the open source tool associated with Hubs called Spoke. It is somewhat Unity-like, but actually easier to use, and there is a lot of free content already that you can use that others have built. So in general, I believe we are at the very beginning of VR spaces for education and training. Most are certainly frustrating to use, the lack of content and functionality we are used to having, and are not as secure as we would like them to be. I think with our help, we can certainly make them much better, and when headsets become cheaper and the form factor less wieldy, it will become more commonly used for educational purposes. Now, before I go, here is an example of a recent lesson a 6th grade teacher did in a VR space for his students. There's a URL there. But you have to be careful because you just might end up getting a refresher course on angle types. Thanks much.
Thank you, Marie, and you all might bookmark that so you can watch that later. So in all this discussion of virtual reality, it's becoming clear that there are advantages and disadvantages of each. I hope my voice is not too loud now. In virtual worlds like Second Life and Kitely, we have many advantages. First, users can build. We're finding there's little chance for creating your own content in a headset VR. Second, virtual worlds are persistent, and they have persistent virtual identity. Without any avatar customability, educators cannot create authentic digital identity. And that we can't really build that authentic trust. Third, sustainable communities with tools built in for collaboration. And fourth, the comfort level over extended time periods beyond just a few minutes. We can have a conference like this that takes place over 3 days, and I don't feel uncomfortable at all. Number 5, immersive experiences can grow and develop and continue and be sustained and built upon, rather than you just go in and those ones that you just experience once, I call those disposable bubbles. They simply pop. Although there may be times when that's useful and that works and that is what you want. But back to that concept of digital identity. For me, that advantage of a recognizable digital identity is essential for education. I came into virtual worlds as a librarian, and I even put that in my name. So Educators need to have authenticity and trust when you have thousands and thousands of people at you. And like Bethany pointed out, around the corner you're hearing people talk. There's a ghost person over there. You don't know who anyone is. If you can build a safe and trusting learning community, you need to have digital identity. So our research here definitely has some obstacles. For example, we don't even know how VR is impacting young people's brains particularly of young people. Advocating virtual environments is extremely difficult because there are so many communication channels. We pointed that out today. We're going out as explorers and then sharing this information with each other, but there's a lot of places to go. Training can... For educators, another obstacle, there are too many tech tools and apps single day coming at us. And then many of these so-called educational apps and virtual environments are created with educational background. Identifying the best practices is going to require enormous effort and time for exploration of changing spaces. I mentioned using virtual reality with young kids. A study with kindergartners revealed that the 5-year-olds could not distinguish whether or not a memory in virtual reality was real. They thought it was the same as a memory they had done in the physical room. Certainly, we all know that children can distinguish reality on a screen with that distance between your eyes and, say, a cartoon or even Minecraft. You can watch this later. You might want to bookmark that. Another thing that's going to be important in the future is to document our progress with this, with where virtual worlds are, where virtual reality is, and where it's going, and sort of mark this moment of time where we currently are living and learning. Marie has built a virtual archival room underwater at the Digital Citizenship Museum in Cairo. We can document our progress in many ways. Photos, like those that Bethany and shared here, and through machinima, through chat logs, search articles and journals, and through blogs, virtual world, virtual reality presentations. There's lots of ways that we can document our progress. Things are quickly evolving. As Marie said, we're just at the beginning where all of these spaces are going. That's the purpose that we're here at this conference. Virtual world's best practices in education. I think we all are at a point where we can agree that virtual worlds have been proven to be valuable for education. This conference has been going on for over a decade. But yet, we're not so sure about the headsets. VR head-mounted displays need some more research for long-time use in education. That's where we are right now. And as we move forward in changing digital culture, I think there's a lot of hope for the future. There's a lot of hope in digital culture through seeking balance in all of these worlds and these tools that we're talking about, whether it's physical, virtual, or mixed reality. We need to appreciate the best in all of these spaces, seek the best practices, and best relationships with high-quality colleagues so that we can balance physical and virtual worlds.